Welcome to Coffin Talk, Episode 2. On today's episode, Stranger Things, Season 5, Volume 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode, finally, of Coffin Talk. And for today's video, we're going to talk about Stranger Things, Season 5, Volume 1. The wait has been very long. I mean, come on. What has it been, like 3 years? I mean, I had a whole different life back then when that thing came out. But what an amazing final season, at least the beginning of a final season. We see so much happen in this and so much character development. It's like every season built up to this point, and it's all somewhat interconnected, and we're starting to see that more and more as the season progresses. But let's talk about some highlights from some characters that would just really, like, truly was amazing. The first standout, and it was something I predicted it would happen. There was a post on one random Stranger Things Facebook group that talked about Karen Wheeler and like what's she gonna do. Like, she's like so much of the absent mom. Like, she has no idea what her kids are doing. They're always off fighting monsters and things and, you know, different situations, and she's just always at home drinking wine, and her husband's like even more worthless. But I kind of predicted that this season we would see something heroic from her because she had a little storyline right here and there, but we've never really seen much from her. And I predicted that she was going to do some kind of self-sacrificing thing, and she did. And one of probably the most horrific, adrenaline pumping and shocking beginnings to a Stranger Things episode ever. And that is episode 2, the disappearance of Holly Wheeler. And my gosh, that scene was intense. And it took me a while to realize, like, oh wow, the Wheelers really don't know what's going on. And you would think, you know, after all these years, and at some point, people would have told them what was going on. And with, you know, the Byers living with them and all this stuff happening, you think, okay, they have to know what's going on. But then you realize they don't. They're completely defenseless, and they're never a target. They're not a target, at least until now. And it was just really, really amazing to see the acting in that scene, the suspense in that scene, when the Demogorgon comes for Holly, and, you know, Karen is taking her bubble bath, and, you know, the father is outside playing golf or whatever the hell he's doing, and the Demogorgon attacks, and you see the instinct, the motherly instinct, and even the fatherly instinct. Like, he tried, right? He came in with a golf club, and he attempted. Good for you, man. But Karen was the true highlight here, in the fact that she was smart enough to hide in the tub. She was, you know, running to get her daughter out, and in the moment where absolute fear, right, the Demogorgon has them blocked, instead of screaming and running or whatever, cowering, she literally just breaks that wine bottle, and she's like, let's go. And she defends her daughter, and in a heroic way. Like, she just starts stabbing that thing, and you're like, oh, like, her first encounter with the Demogorgon, she has no idea what the hell this thing is, and she's just going to town on that thing. But you know, after all these seasons and what that thing can do, there was no way that was going to end well. And when Nancy runs in, and she just stops, and you see the blood, and it's like, oh my god, what happened? And there's so many different possibilities running through your head at that moment. Like, is she injured? Is she gone? Is she dead? And then we see it, and it's like so heartbreaking, because she literally, nothing else mattered. She was going to protect her youngest daughter, her baby. And it was amazing. Such an amazing scene. And let's talk about Holly Wheeler for a second. That kid has always had some kind of intuitive, I don't know, link to everything that's going on. You go back to the first season, she's following the Christmas lights. Like, she sees things that are coming. And the fact that she's one of the kids that's chosen, and Vecna's like, oh, because you're insignificant, like, or whatever he says at the end. It's like, insignificant, but there's something special about her. And there's something special about the, you know, is his name Derek? I don't want to say his nickname, but delightful, right? But it's just so interesting how they tied that character into it. And really a whole new generation of little kids, because our little kids from the start are much older now, and they look older. obviously. But it's like they're protecting the next generation that this thing is going after. And Holly Wheeler, yeah, it was just amazing how they tied that in. And then, oh my goodness, Max comes back, and in a brilliant way, because I always wondered, like, when that scene happened in season 4, when Vecna gets her, and she's kind of like just lost, and there's nothing there when Elle tries to read her. You think, okay, she's dead, like she's just a body, she's a shell. But no, she's not. She's literally trapped in there, and they did it so brilliantly to where, like, oh, she's gonna fight still, like she's still fighting, but she's fighting from inside Vecna's mind. And you're like, what's gonna happen? 'Cause we don't know what's gonna happen to her, so hopefully things go well. But it is the final season, right? And in the final season, the stakes are higher, and you see that with the Wheelers, right? I mean, for Karen Wheeler to be taken out the way she was, she's not dead yet, but just the intensity of that, they're gonna go there, they're gonna go places. So many great moments. I think Hopper and Eleven had a lot of good shining moments, but really it was when they're in the lab at final episode of this volume, and he basically tells her he can't lose her, right? But he's always believed in her, and he always trusted her. And I literally started crying, because I was like, what? Like, that was too much. That was a lot to unpack. And then he's got the bomb strapped to his chest. He's like, I'm taking this thing out. You're not gonna die. And you see the amount of love he has for her, and that is like his daughter. It is his daughter, right? And the fact that he's willing to protect her, and at all costs, he's willing to blow himself up. Such a wonderful, heartwarming scene. And her training, and her, she's ready for this fight, but she doesn't get to fight him. And I love that. Like, we're waiting. We're gonna hold that till probably the end. But she truly is, a remarkable character. But what I love about this season is it wasn't all about 11 and fighting Vecna. It was every character seemed to have their own moments. And one really good one was Robin and Will, the pairing of those two. And Robin is lesbian, and Will is gay, and they have that conversation when she recognizes, oh, he likes Mike. Like, she recognizes, like, oh, gay boy, and in love with a straight guy. What could go wrong with that? But she gives him that advice, like, we look for ourselves in other people sometimes, but it's always in us, in ourselves, and be ourselves. And he has that moment, and you see it like culminates in the final moments of the 4th episode, where he controls the hive mind and he kills the Demogorgons to save his friends. Brilliant, beautiful, love it. But that scene in the tunnels when they talk, it's such a wonderful, powerful scene. And I think it speaks to a lot of experiences that young LGBTQ youth experience, right? Going through, those kind of emotions, and trying to figure out who you are, especially in the 1980s. Like, in 2025, like, come on, like, who cares? It's a lot more easier now. It's not completely easy now to come out or to be yourself, but it's definitely harder in the 1980s than it was, in today's world. But it still speaks to today's, not just youth, but just in general, people who may be struggling with their sexuality, or who they are, their identity. It's great that they put that in there. And we've known since season 1 that Will is going to be gay. There are hints that were dropped throughout all the seasons, and and he's in love with his best friend. Not uncommon, but it's good that they put that in. And they tied it into his power. Like, you identify yourself, you find strength in yourself, and you do what needs to be done. It's such a wonderful scene. Erica, oh my goodness. I was wondering how they would tie her into everything, because she seems to have a bigger role in every season. And this one was cute. Like, she's got her attitude, she's got her sass. You can see she's also intelligent, like the boys are. But her role into making sure that she basically drugs that one family, and then she just has a needle, and she's like, I told you to eat your pie, and she just like injects that needle. It's like, oh, okay. That was pretty good. That was pretty funny. And she's pretty tough. Nancy, I think we're gonna see something more from her in the next volume. I think she kind of get held back a little bit on this one, but you can see her determination and her anger. someone is going to die. Always when it comes to final seasons of television series, everything, you know, is on the table, and everyone's a risk of who's going to die, who's going to live, what's the story going to be. And there's a moment where Eleven and Mike have that talk about, what happens after the campaign, after the heroes win. And he tells her about, oh, you can't stay in that town that you're in because so much has happened. You leave, live happily ever after in some place with 3 waterfalls or whatever. And she's like, could that really happen? And he's like, oh yeah, of course. And as the audience, you're like, oh crap, that's not going to happen. And that, or maybe it will, in some way or some form. It kind of harkens back to the Dark Knight Rises when Alfred's, and Bruce have that conversation at one point, and Alfred's like, I don't know where the hell he is, Paris or something, and he sees Bruce Wayne, and he sees Selina Kyle, and it's like, oh, you're alive, you're fine, you're well. Moving on, we a little nod, acknowledgement, is that kind of thing going to happen here, where maybe there is a happy ending coming? I've never been a fan of happy endings because life is not always happy, and I feel like, and Hopper even says, in this life you just can't count on anything, you can't trust anything to be easy. And the easy thing would be that all these characters survive, and all these characters, they fight Vecna and they kill him, and they all live happily ever after. But we know that's not going to be the case, because that's not good storytelling. So who is going to die? All bets are off in the final season of a television series. And I mean, sometimes they'll wait till the very last episode and, kill who they're going to kill. But you never know. I don't think any of them are safe, honestly. I think that there's going to definitely be some tears in the next volume. And then, of course, the final episode will come around New Year's. And that's going to be very interesting. Dustin's arc is very interesting because he was always a happy one, so full of joy and positivity. And in this season, he's just not. And it's because of Eddie and the way the town's treat him. And he gets beat up by those guys. And oh my goodness, such a horrific scene to watch. But what's going to happen with his story arc? Because he's got to come full circle. Like, you got to, okay, depress Dustin, okay, you got to go away. And where's Old One? Some semblance of Old One. Because I think that happens to a lot of us, where dark things happen to us and we lose ourselves, but eventually we find ourselves back to, not where we were, but back to a semblance of who we are. And I think that's a journey that he's going to go on, hopefully. We'll see. Steve and Jonathan vying for Nancy's attention is probably the least interesting thing of this season. But I think in the end, it's going to be more of who's going to sacrifice themselves to save Nancy. And it's probably going to be Steve, honestly. I think his days may be numbered at some point, just because he was such a hated character in the first season. He really evolved as a babysitter of these kids. It's like the way Hopper protects 11, he's protected those boys. And I don't think they'll end the show without one more, Mama Steve, Babysitter Steve kind of moment. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Wonderful season, Volume 1. One thing it boggles the mind of, why are we releasing a Volume 1, a Volume 2, and then a final episode? They kind of did it with the last season, didn't they? Where Season 4 came out, and then the final episode was like later, and it was a much longer episode, and it's kind of what they're doing here, because I think the last one's probably gonna be like 2 hours. But it's funny because Netflix really popularized binge watching, right? They released a whole thing and you watch it in one sitting, and that's been the story of Netflix. And now probably one of their biggest shows, they're doing it in 2 parts. And they give us 4 episodes, and they're gonna give us another, I don't know, maybe 3 episodes, or maybe 4, I don't know, in Christmas, and then the final one. Smart though, and I appreciate it, because why? It's a holiday break. Thanksgiving, got to watch 4 of them. Christmas, get to watch another group, and then New Year's, get to finally finish the fight, right? And so let's talk about finishing the fight. There's a moment in the last episode where Joyce stands up to the Demogorgon, right, with the axe. And then not only that, but Vecna. Like, she literally, like, the look she gives him when he emerges and he's killed all the soldiers. Like, he's literally killed every soldier that has all this firepower. And here she is, a mother you know, standing or sitting or whatever over her injured child. And there he is, the main big bad of the Stranger Things universe. And this woman who, even Mike says, oh, your mom's pretty badass, but she's kind of small. It doesn't matter. Kind of like Karen with the Demogorgon. This woman, literally, and think about it, like, this role for Winona Ryder was her resurrection in Hollywood and acting. And for this woman who went through so much in that first, remember that first season where she was all crazy with the camera, with the, not the camera, with the Christmas lights, and just so insane. Everyone thought she was so crazy because she was just trying to find her son. That whole first season was all about that. And here she sees the thing that's responsible for everything. And the look of just hatred in her face and ready to fight this thing. She has no way of fighting it. She doesn't even have a weapon on her. But she stands up and she just basically starts charging him. And of course, he just like tosses her aside. But it's those moments. And that's what I think makes Stranger Things such a powerful series. It's the moments where mundane, ordinary people stand up against the extraordinary. Yes, you have 11 with her powers. Yes, you have, well, now you have Will with whatever powers he's got. But it's always, in these stories, it's always the regular, everyday people who don't have to be fighting, who choose to fight, who choose to stand up and go up against whatever the threat is to save the world, to selflessly do these things to protect, the world. And in reality, it's a world that doesn't like these people. They're all in some ways outcasts, right? The four boys, obviously the four nerds or whatever the hell you want to call them, since their middle school days through their high school days, nobody likes these kids. Robin, very quirky, weird, and she's a lesbian. Nobody likes them, back in the 80s especially, right? Steve, who was popular, but then he kind of fell off because he hangs out with the weirdos. Nancy, she was brainy, then she a little popular, then she went crazy too, or she went weird too, and Jonathan Byers even weirder. Just all of them. Hopper, the formerly drunk sheriff who always said that Mondays were for, or what do you say, mornings were for coffee and contemplation. Like, and Joyce Byers, oh my goodness, like, that's the woman you know in town, like, oh, she's a little already, and then just to see, how she is, it's like, these are the outcasts that nobody likes or pays attention to or cares about, and they're the ones who are risking their lives to save everyone. And I think that's what makes it so special. It's what made Buffy the Vampire Slayer, my favorite show of all time, special, because it wasn't, obviously Buffy was a great hero, but it was always her friends, her family, who was behind her, and they're the ones, that helped her fight. They didn't have to, they chose to. And the same thing applies here in Stranger Things. These characters don't have to be doing this, but they do it. And they do it because it's right. And I cannot wait to see how this ends. And I don't like the wait, I would like to, finish it now, but I'm cool waiting because I know Christmas is going to be a really, really fun time with the next, batch of episodes for Volume 2. This has been a show that I've really, really enjoyed over the years. It just, a really good one, and I'm just, excited to see how it all ends and to see, what's going to become of these characters. And I gotta say, that chubby little boy, spirit animal right there. He literally, when they kidnapped him and he's in the barn, he literally beats them all up and then climbs that ladder, escapes to safety, gets himself up there, and like, he's just, yeah. And he's got the best little one-liners, but also selfless, because he doesn't have to be doing this either. He doesn't have to go into that camp and read the Morse code and send kids to the restroom one by one. He doesn't have to do that. He could have easily been like, oh no, that's scary, and whatever, but he didn't. He's delightful Derek, I think his name is. haven't spent too much time with him to know his actual name, but he is, pretty extraordinary character. So, Volume 1 of Stranger Things, I will give a solid 4.5 out of 5. It was just really what I've been waiting for, to see the last episodes, to, see how this is all going to end and how it all is interconnected. And Linda Hamilton, though, good choice for a villain. If I were Hopper, though, instead of hitting her with the gun, I probably would have shot her. I mean, come on. She's going to mess up the plan somewhere. She probably has some kind of idea of what to do, but probably not. Who knows? Who knows? But thank you all for listening to this, and it's not as detailed of analysis as I would like, but I just felt the need to film a little reaction to Stranger Things Season 5, Volume 1. Thank you all, and maybe I'll see you around Christmas time for the next review.